home in the city. The NYPD bomb squad is near Gracie Mansion. And according to Fox News correspondent CB Cotton, she is reporting that Gracie Mansion has been evacuated. So this is a live look from New York City as we're taking a live look at a very heavy police presence. The bomb squad currently located at Gracie Mansion. Fox News correspondent CB Cotton reporting that Gracie Mansion has been evacuated. And we also have this. This is from the New York Police Department issuing an advisory saying that due to a suspicious package, East End Avenue between East 85th and East 87th Street, as well as East 86th Street between York Avenue and East End Avenue, are closed to vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Additionally, Carl Schurz Park is closed at this time. So breaking news out of New York City that the NYPD bomb squad on location near Gracie Mansion, and we continue to follow the very latest on this. This also comes on the heels of two Pennsylvania teenagers who are now charged with federal terrorism offenses after allegedly throwing potentially lethal homemade bombs outside Gracie Mansion. One suspect allegedly saying that he wanted an attack, quote, even bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing. So we are continuing to follow this, and Fox 5 New York just sharing just a little bit more information, essentially reiterating what the NYPD is asking, just urging everyone in this vicinity to avoid the area of Carl Schurz Park this afternoon as they're investigating this area. This is immediately adjacent to Gracie Mansion to just provide a little NYC suspected Gracie Mansion terror plot. NYPD is investigating Pennsylvania teenagers. Both suspects are now they're under investigation to determine whether they were directly recruited by ISIS. In the meantime, I also wanted to share this live look with you. This takes us to the White House, as we've been sharing with you at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So in just about 30 minutes or so, we are expecting to have the White House briefing amid the ongoing conflict in Iran. And you can see that the media slowly starting to trickle in as soon as we get an alert as to when exactly this will be taking place. Sometimes it takes place earlier, oftentimes it takes place just a little bit later. But we're monitoring this, and of course, we will be bringing that to you. Perhaps Caroline Levitt will be reacting to the number of breaking news incidents and events happening right now. So what we're going to do is we are just going to step away for another break here on Live Now from Fox. We have a lot of news, as you can see, on this Tuesday. Much more to come. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinu. We are continuing to follow and monitor two breaking news stories. One taking us out to New York City. This is a live look right here near Gracie Mansion, as we know that the NYPD bomb squad has been called out to a park that is right across from Gracie Mansion. This is the area of Carl Schurz Park. NYPD urging residents to avoid this area out of an abundance of caution. Residents being asked to avoid the entire vicinity as they continue to monitor this. And according to our Fox News correspondent, CB Cotton, Gracie Mansion has been evacuated. This comes after an incident over the weekend involving two Pennsylvania teenagers who are now charged with allegedly throwing potentially lethal homemade bombs outside Gracie Mansion. And in the official legal documents, they did talk about being inspired by ISIS. So we're monitoring this live look from New York City. We're going to be bringing you any updates as they happen. We're also monitoring another breaking news story out of Baltimore. This is a live look at the harbor there in Baltimore, Maryland, where two police officers were shot. We do know that a suspect was also shot in this incident. This is in the 6200 block of Park Heights Avenue there in Baltimore. And we do understand that there is a media staging area. No word, though, on when police might be providing an update. But that specific address is located near a local synagogue. And we were hearing from one of the folks who said that he saw all of this unfold near the synagogue as we were bringing you that live interview. We're also monitoring the White House press briefing that is scheduled to get underway in just about 30 minutes time, as there is a lot here at home and also around the world, including the ongoing Iran conflict. President Trump is signaling, though, that he is expecting the conflict to end more quickly. Now, he had given an open-ended timeline of about 5 weeks for Operation Epic Fury, but he says that progress is being made swiftly and significantly. So once this does get underway, we did want to bring that to you. And earlier today, we were getting the very latest update from Secretary Hegseth and General Kane on Operation Epic Fury as it continues in Iran. We're going to play out the very latest remarks for you right now.
Well, to our fellow Americans, brave warriors, and steadfast allies, good morning. You know, as someone who led troops, led soldiers in the streets of Baghdad and Samarra, Iraq, and who trained counterinsurgents in Kabul, Afghanistan, and who still carries the weight of brothers lost to Iranian terrorist proxies, many backed by the same Iranian regime we're confronting now. This fight, Operation Epic Fury, it hits home. Our generation understands this fight. For 47 years, these barbaric savages in the Iranian regime have murdered our brothers in arms, my guys, your guys, our guys. Through their terrorist proxies and cowardly attacks, now they race toward a nuclear bomb to hold the world hostage. The Iranians have targeted and killed thousands of my American brothers. That race to a nuclear bomb, President Trump will never allow it. Not now, not ever, not on our watch. The mullahs are desperate and scrambling. Like the terrorist cowards they are, they fire missiles from schools and hospitals, deliberately targeting innocents, because they know their military is being systematically degraded and annihilated. Iran's neighbors, and in some cases, former allies in the Gulf, they've abandoned them. And their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, either broken, ineffective, or on the sidelines. Iran stands alone, and they are badly losing. On day 10 of Operation Epic Fury, we are winning with an overwhelming and unrelenting focus on our objectives, which are the same as the day I gave my first briefing here on Operation Epic Fury. They're straightforward, and we are executing them with ruthless precision. One, destroy their missile stockpiles, their missile launchers, and their defense industrial base. Missiles and their ability to make them. Two, destroy their navy. And three, permanently deny Iran nuclear weapons forever. It's a laser-focused, maximum authority mission delivered with overwhelming and unrelenting precision. No hesitation, no half measures. As President Trump declared yesterday, we're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force. We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But we do so on our timeline and at our choosing. For example, today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet. Just the bifurcation, just the trend lines that we talked about on our first briefing. You see, this is not 2003. This is not endless nation building under those types of quagmires we saw under Bush or Obama. It's not even close. Our generation of soldier will not let that happen again, and nor will this president, who very clearly ran against those kinds of never-ending, nebulously scoped missions. Those days are dead. Instead, we're winning decisively with brutal efficiency, total air dominance, and an unbreakable will to accomplish the president's objectives on our timeline. We stay locked on the target because here at the Department of War, that's our job. Now, the chairman and I, having just returned from Dover last night, our troops and their families and the enormous sacrifice that they make is certainly heavy on my mind. So I'll close with scripture, drawing strength from Psalm 144. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. He is my loving God and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield, in whom I take refuge. May the Lord grant unyielding strength and refuge to our warriors, unbreakable protection to them and our homeland, and total victory over those who seek to harm them. And amen. God bless our troops and this mission. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm here today to continue the updates to the American people and to those in the room on Operation Epic Fury. First, let me start with honoring our fallen. As the Secretary said, on Saturday and again last night at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, our nation's leaders honored our returning fallen as they arrived home for their final time. Last week, I shared a few of the names, and today I want to share the rest. Major Jeffrey O'Brien and Chief Warrant Officer 3 Robert Marzan were the final two fallen to return home and members of the U.S. Army Reserve's 103rd Sustainment Command out of Des Moines, Iowa. Last night, as the news has been reporting, we honored the return of Staff Sergeant Benjamin Pennington of the U.S. Army's 1st Space Brigade from Fort Carson, Colorado. When I met Ben's family last night, his mom, his dad, and his sister, they showed me a picture, a drawing that Ben had made when he was in kindergarten. It was clear all the way back then that Ben wanted to do one thing in his life, and he wanted to serve his country and be a soldier. And to the Penningtons, just know how Ben was absolutely a great one. And finally, Major Sorfleet Davies, who returned home this weekend. after sadly passing away from a medical condition while on duty in Kuwait. We welcome him home as well and mourn with his family. To the families and the families of all of our fallen, we share in your profound grief. The Joint Force remains eternally grateful for your sacrifice and the gift of a great example that your service members have given all of us. I want you to know that their names will never be forgotten, and you and your family are part of our Joint Force family forever. Let me talk a little bit about the progress thus far, acknowledging that Admiral Cooper will likely continue to give updates from CENTCOM. As the Secretary said, we're in the 10th, moving into the 11th day of Operation Epic Fury. The Joint Force remains focused on 3 military objectives: continue to destroy Iranian ballistic missiles and drone capability in order to prevent attacks on the U.S. and others throughout the region. And this means attacking launch sites, command and control nodes, stockpiles before they can threaten our personnel, our facilities, and our partners. Second, we continue to strike the Iranian Navy and their capabilities in order to do things like sustain movement through the Straits of Hormuz. And third, we continue to start working on and going deeper into Iran's military and industrial base in order to prevent the regime from being able to attack Americans, our interests, and our partners for years to come and project power outside their borders. This means servicing production facilities, research and development sites, and infrastructure. Let me turn to the map. We're going to try digital today to prevent laser injury. Since our last update, CENTCOM continues to make progress across the southern flank. To date, they've struck more than 5,000 targets. U.S. Strategic Command bombers recently dropped dozens of 2,000-pound GPS-penetrating weapons on deeply buried missile launchers across the southern flank. We also have struck several one-way drone factories to get at the heart of their autonomous capability. And of course, alongside our regional partners along the southern flank, continue to execute intercepts against one-way attack drones using fighters and attack helicopters. Our strikes mean we've made significant progress in reducing the number of missile and drone attacks out of Iran. Ballistic missile attacks continue to trend downward, 90% from where they've started, and one-way attack drones have decreased 83% since the beginning of the operation. A testament to our air defenders and our air defense systems, and as I said, our partners in the region continue to do great work as well. Second, we're making substantial progress towards destroying the Navy. In the first 10 days of the conflict, we're more than 50 Iranian naval ships into the campaign using a combination of artillery, fighters, bombers, and sea-launched missiles. As Admiral Cooper noted last Thursday, we struck and sank an Iranian drone carrier ship, and U.S. CENTCOM continues today to hunt and strike mine-laying vessels and mine storage facilities. This work will continue. Third, against our objectives, we've begun to target Iran's military and industrial complex, again, focusing on centers of gravity to get upstream of the shooters out in the field in order to deny them the ability to continue to generate those one-way attack drones. Let me spend a minute talking about the Joint Force. Across the area of responsibility, this is gritty and tireless work, and I cannot begin to explain how incredibly proud I am of the extraordinary courage, tenacity, and grit and professionalism within the Joint Force. Last time I had a chance to talk about the Army's incredible logisticians who are out there sustaining the fight. Today I want to highlight a few groups of sailors. First, I want to thank the men and women of the Ford Carrier Strike Group and their families, and let all of them know how grateful I am for their leadership and service. The crews on board this strike group have already been endured months at sea only to get their deployment extended. These exceptional Americans, rogered up, all supported by their families, continue to stand the watch, taking the fight to the enemy over and over again, night after night. Aboard ships like the USS Ford and the Abraham Lincoln are a special group of sailors I want to highlight today. These are the men and women, the sailors up on the roof running operations on the flight deck. With an average age of the early 20s, these are the unsung heroes of naval aviation. These young sailors, known for wearing yellow shirts, are in charge of the catapults, taxiing jets around on the flight deck, shooting jets off the front end, and recovering jets off the back end. They are literally involved with every single movement on the roof on an aircraft carrier. They are the last ones that a naval aviator sees before getting shot off the front end, and the first one that a naval aviator sees after safely trapping on the back end. And just for a minute, imagine you're standing on that aircraft carrier flight deck. There's 30 knots of wind in your face. The deck is slippery, covered in grease. It's noisy. There are propellers spinning. There's jet blast everywhere. The helicopters are running. Your head is on a swivel, and you're trying to direct a multi-million-dollar fighter into a 1-foot square box so that those naval aviators can be shot off into the black of night to go do America's work. Those jets are fully loaded with missiles and bombs, and they are a world-class team combined with the naval aviation and the aviators in those jets. This beautiful symphony of American spirit is the definition of perfectly organized chaos. And these crews do it every single time the carrier is at work. Oh, by the way, in the middle of the night and oftentimes in the pouring rain. These are dedicated young people who take the road less traveled to serve their great nation, doing the deeds that we need them to do. America's enlisted force is the pride of every nation's military, certainly ours, and the envy of every other one as well. Each and every one of them out there across the joint force are extraordinary, and in particular today I want to highlight the yellow shirts. Ladies and gentlemen, our work continues. It'll continue to be difficult. I ask every American to keep our deployed force and their families in our thoughts. Combat deployments can be tough on the force and the families, and it's important that we continue to remember that. I remain deeply humbled by the 2.8 million members of the Joint Force, and I'll end where I started, and that's remembering our fallen and their families whose sacrifice will be felt forever. And with that, I'll take some questions with the Secretary.
A beautiful symphony of American spirit. Well said, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, sir.
And I will just note that no other country in the world is capable of executing what the chairman just described, day after day, night after night, unrelenting. Well said. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Alexandra Ingersoll, One America News. You talked, Mr. Secretary, you talked at the conference in Florida on Thursday that there was a 90% missile capabilities degradation and 83% drone degradation, and I know the chairman just repeated those numbers. We've seen the most amount of fighting these past 5 days. Is there any update to those percentages? And also, are you able to give any quantification of degradation to the enemy's nuclear capabilities yet?
What those numbers represent is a persistent low ability to respond, which is what we're looking for, right? It's if the enemy can simply wait and then project power, that's problematic. And we've seen some spurts here or there, but ultimately the trend lines, if you look at the charts that we look at every day, have gone like this down to a flat. It doesn't mean they won't be able to project. It doesn't mean our air defenders still don't have to defend. They do, but that is strong evidence of degradation, along with the battle damage assessment that the Joint Staff does, which takes time. You've got to look at imagery and recognize whether something's been simply degraded or it's been destroyed, or whether an underground facility has been collapsed or completely obliterated. So there's differences in how you evaluate that, but the numbers staying that low is a demonstration of the efficacy for sure. Yeah, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. There's been reports that the new leader of Iran has been wounded. Do you know if this is true and what his condition is? And then another one, President Trump said he had a really good call with President Putin yesterday. Will Russia be aiding us in this conflict, and can you share anything on that?
Well, the president, as I've said before, maintains strong relationships with world leaders, which creates opportunities and options for us in very dynamic ways. So the president said it was a good call. I was not on it, but those that were said it was a strong call, reaffirming hopefully the opportunity for some peace in Russia, Ukraine, and also a recognition that as it pertains to this conflict, they should not be involved. The first question was?
On the new leader of Iran, there's reports that he's been wounded.
Oh, the new leader of Iran. He would be wise to heed the words of our president, which is to not pursue nuclear weapons and come out and state as such. As far as his status, that's not something I can comment on right now. Yeah, right here.
Correct. Mr. Secretary, Eric Schmidt with the New York Times. A question for you first. Last week, you talked about this being the beginnings of an air campaign that could last 3 to 8 weeks. Can you give us your assessment on where we are now? And Mr. Chairman, in any conflict, the enemy or the adversary adapts to the tactics it faces. Can you talk about the most challenging adaptation the Iranian military has made to the U.S. military? What challenges are you facing most right now? Thank you.
I appreciate the question. Where we are is in a very strong place, giving the President of the United States maximum options. And from the beginning, from this podium, we haven't stated how long it will take. Our will is endless. Ultimately, the President gets to determine the end state of those objectives, right? But what he's said continually, and I want the American people to understand, is this is not endless. It's not protracted. We're not allowing mission creep. The President has set a very specific mission to accomplish. And our job is to unrelentingly deliver that. Now, he gets to control the throttle. He's the one deciding, he's the one elected on behalf of the American people when we're achieving those particular objectives. And so it's not for me to posit whether it's the beginning, the middle, or the end. That's his, and he'll continue to communicate that. What we serve him as is we give him updates on a daily basis of exactly where we are so he can make that determination on the throttle. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the question on adaptation. As you're right, no plan survives first contact with the enemy or Murphy. They're adapting, as are we. Of course, we have very entrepreneurial warfighters out there. I'd rather not, for operational security reasons, tell them what's working. So I'm not a not answer that question based on that. But we are watching what they're doing, and we are adapting faster than they are.
Are they more formidable than you anticipated, General?
I mean, I think they're fighting, and I respect that, but I don't think they're more formidable than what we thought.
Secretary Erickson, thank you. Jordan Conrad's from the Gateway Pundit. Axios reported, citing U.S. and Israeli sources, that the U.S. was not happy with strikes on 30 fuel depots in Iran. While this is anonymous sourcing, it seems kind of congruent with what President Trump said yesterday, that there's certain spots they don't want to hit relating to energy infrastructure that would take a long time to rebuild. And whether this reporting is true or not, what's your message to Americans, those who supported the president and those who aren't really in favor of this war and who worry that Israel might be taking advantage of the U.S.'s backing? And then for Mr. Chairman, for you, I wanted to ask, when you say that we're moving inland, what capabilities does Iran have to shoot down jets over their land? And would that trigger some kind of rescue operation that could risk a bigger ground operation?
Well, I would just state by saying Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours. But what Iran has felt is the power of the world's two most powerful air forces. In that particular case, those weren't our strikes or that objective, or that wasn't necessarily our objective. But the president has made it clear to those concerns that we're not getting pulled in any direction. We're leading. The president is leading. He's determining where we want to go, what the outcome will be, what the end state is, with a very keen eye. And I understand those concerns because I've heard from a lot of people who I went through 20 years of those wars myself. Worried about getting dragged in, worried about mission creep, worried about nation building or democracy expansion. That's never the perspective the president has pursued on this. Just because previous presidents and previous secretaries have decided to just pour more resources and more people in toward some unguided end state doesn't mean that's the way the world needs to look today. In fact, the American people voted for a different approach. But what the president also stated from the beginning was Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And it's one thing to say it. It's easy to say. Anybody can say that. I mean, Barack Obama said that. But to do something about it takes courage and resolve. But in that courage and in that resolve, you can also be very scoped in what you're trying to execute to ensure that the sacrifice of Americans, American treasure, American lives, all of those properly meet the objective that you're trying to accomplish. And certainly, as someone I talked out front about what the Iranians have done to our generation, yes, we're clear-eyed about it. But my job is to keep it scoped, given the directive to the president to accomplish the mission.
Thank you for the question. Most of their higher-end surface-to-air missile systems are not factors at this point in time. We're able to move around fighters that are moving deeper with relative impunity. Always some risk out there. I don't want to say that there isn't, and we'll always maintain and retain capability of doing search and rescue type of things. But I don't want to get into the details. But thank you for the question.
Jillian.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. President Trump told our team on the ground early this morning that the thing that has surprised him the most during the course of this operation so far has been the Iranian regime attacking countries that are not attacking them. I'm curious if that surprised you as well. And General, curious if you were open to the possibility of escorting vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, and if you could describe some of the challenges of doing so.
Big mistake by the Iranian regime to start targeting its neighbors right away, exposing who they are and what they're all about, indiscriminate targeting, flailing recklessly at the beginning. I can't say that we anticipated necessarily that's exactly how they would react, but we knew it was a possibility. And I think it was a demonstration of the desperation of that regime then and that regime now, that they still think their pathway out is to try to alienate their Arab partners even more, who've instead decided to come to us and have been willing to go on the offense, have been giving us access, basing, and overflight in a new partnership that will continue to remake the region the way that President Trump did with the Abraham Accords. So you're pushing those countries in our direction to support this effort, further alienating Iran. And I think it's worth underscoring. I see in the media banners that say, war expanding or war spread. It's actually the opposite. It's actually quite contained, and more of those countries are coming on side, recognizing that you can't live under a conventional umbrella with nuclear ambitions with a radical regime like that. Again, properly scoping the objectives in the process. And then you want to talk about the Strait?
Sure. On the potential, if tasked to escort, we'll look at the range of options to set the military conditions to be able to do that. And then, like we always do with every potential mission, come to the Secretary and the President with both what are the resources required, what is the command and control required, and what are the risks, and how do we mitigate those risks. So we're looking at a range of options there, and we'll figure out how to solve problems as they come to us.
But I would reiterate also to add to what the chairman said, the truth the President posted last night about that, saying if Iran does anything to stop the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. He goes on to say, death, fire, and fury will rain upon them. You've seen the truth and read it. But he takes very seriously the condition of that straits. We have capabilities that no other nation on earth has, and we're certainly working with our energy partners across the administration to control for that. That's part of that scoping of this. The world needs to understand this doesn't have, this isn't intended to be, nor is it something that will expand. We know exactly what we're attempting to achieve here, scoped properly, and the American people can count on that for sure.
Thank you so much, Secretary Hegseth. President Trump has long said that he wants to minimize the loss of life in war, which wherever it occurs in whatever country, which so many people obviously appreciate. Can you detail the specific measures the Pentagon is taking to minimize civilian casualties and strikes inside Iran? And secondarily, is the Pentagon prioritizing replenishment of precision-guided munitions, long-ranged strike weapons, or air defense interceptors? And can you share any details on which systems are being prioritized?
Yeah, seeing it from the inside every single day, including this, no nation takes more precautions to ensure there's never targeting of civilians than the United States of America. From the boat strikes in the Caribbean, where every single strike is assessed to this campaign here, no nation in the history of warfare has ever attempted in every way possible to avoid civilian casualties. And frankly, that's a point that just isn't appreciated enough. Where things happen that need to be investigated, we will investigate to the question shouted in the back, that it's not Open source is not the place to determine what did or did not happen. We take things very, very seriously and investigate them thoroughly, which takes time, and which is why it does take time. But ultimately, unlike Iran, who targets civilians indiscriminately, who we've seen in the intel moving rocket launchers into civilian neighborhoods, near schools, near hospitals, to try to prevent our ability to strike. That's how they operate. And then they set the targeting of drones and missiles toward civilian targets, hospitals, hotels, airports. CENTCOM's been very good about putting that information out. That's how terrorist regimes fight. They target civilians. We do not. And I can tell you this administration and this Pentagon focuses on that very, very closely.
Does it have Tomahawk missiles?
Go ahead, right here.
Sir, this morning, the Iranian government is saying a lot. They continue to say they're prepared for a long war. If that's the case, what could you tell the American people as far as the steps the Department of War is taking to make sure our troops have the protection and the resources they need as the mission continues?
I think there's one thing I can sleep quietly at night knowing is that we're giving every resource humanly possible to our troops on the front lines to ensure they're protected. In fact, as I said in that first press briefing, even before we set the offense, we set the defense. We made sure we had the ability to defend, and then we moved as many Americans off the bases and into other places as possible. So as this progresses, the chairman, or the question was asked of the chairman about how the enemy adapts. Well, of course, we adapt too in real time, and to watch our warriors iterate on air defense and interdiction on drones and missiles and how we get after it. It's incredible how they refine the tactics, bring in new assets to find different ways of getting at emerging technologies. So that is one of the things we're laser focused on every day. Yes, we're going on offense more effectively than any country in human history, but we're also ensuring that in every way possible we're defending the best Americans we have who wear our uniform, no doubt. Let's do one more.
Thanks, Secretary Hegseth. The president has indicated that maybe the operation will wrap up sooner than he thought it was going to. What's the plan once the U.S. stops military action? Will the U.S. play a role in the aftermath, or will they leave Iran to sort it out?
Ultimately, the aftermath is going to be in America's interests, our interests. We won't live under a nuclear blackmail scenario of conventional missiles that can target our people, which is why the objectives have been scoped from the beginning. Missiles, missile production, a defense industrial base, Navy, all in service of ensuring they don't have nuclear power projection capabilities. That's what matters to President Trump. That's what matters to the American people. And ultimately, that's why we're so laser focused on ensuring those objectives and those objectives alone are met. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was the very latest from Secretary Hegseth and General Kane. I did want to share this with you. At any moment now, we are expecting the White House press briefing to get underway amid Operation Epic Fury. This was scheduled to get underway at 2 p.m. Eastern time, so we're going to continue to monitor that. In the meantime, though, my colleague Josh Breslow had the chance to speak with State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott on Operation Epic Fury. Let's play that out for you right now.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the situation there in the Middle East with Americans who have said they're stranded or are trying to get back home. We know that a lot of alerts have been issued. So I wanted to ask what the State Department is doing right now to help those who are maybe stranded in the Middle East.
What we've seen is the activation of that 24/7 task force, which is really a global effort. Personnel across the world that are working 24/7 to help Americans who need it. Our commitment has been to bring home every single American who wants to come home from the Middle East. And right now we see that capacity. We see more seats on charter flights available than demand for them. We have that 24/7 task force that's been activated. We have hundreds of personnel fielding those calls and then proactively reaching out to the American people with options for U.S. arranged departure options for those charter flights, for charter buses, but also for commercial options where available. And we're seeing some Americans who have reached out for help actually decline U.S. arranged departure options for those commercial options as we've seen availability. So we're continuing to monitor those phone lines. We're continuing to have that task force. We're continuing to help Americans in need. Our highest priority is the safety and security of the American people.
What is one thing that maybe people out there, Americans who are in the Middle East, don't realize that the State Department can do for them?
Well, one thing is the step.state.gov platform that people can register for, which are security alerts for your specific region. So what we're seeing is when people register at step.state.gov, we have constant security alerts about updates in the region that you're in. So for example, within the Middle East, there are updates being published multiple times a day, in addition to updates from the consulate and embassy. But it's also a global program that offers alerts when security situations change wherever you might be traveling to. So it's an important tool for the American people in order to get those security alerts. That's in addition to travel.state.gov. If you go to travel.state.gov, you can see the specific security guidance for the region or area that you are in. So it has that guidance. It tells you the latest in terms of the security posture, diplomatic posture of facilities. We're constantly examining the security posture that we have throughout the world, especially in the region given recent events. We're constantly updating the American people, and that's an important tool for Americans that are looking for the latest guidance when it comes to security.
Tommy Pigott at the U.S. State Department, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and helping to discuss all of this. Anything you want to add about resources for Americans there in the Middle East before I let you go?
Again, if you're an American in the region that is looking for help, please call +1 202 501 4444. Hundreds of personnel that are fielding calls and then proactively reaching out to arrange that specific travel option, whether charter flights or commercial options were available. Or you can go to state.gov, where you'll see a link to a travel intake form to register your interest. The State Department's highest priority is the safety and security of the American people. We are working 24/7 to live up to that commitment.
Tommy Pigott there at the U.S. State Department. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
And our thanks to my colleague Josh Breslow for that interview with State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott. We're taking a live look from two different angles of the ongoing conflict in Iran. On the left-hand side of your screen, that is a live look from inside the White House. As any moment, we are expecting the White House press briefing to touch more on the very latest in Operation Epic Fury. On the right-hand side of your screen, that is a live look from Beirut, Lebanon. And we do see, and we've continued to see over the number of days since Operation Epic Fury began, along with Operation Roaring Lion from Israel, we've seen very targeted strikes aimed at Hezbollah in Lebanon. It seems quiet now at the moment, but over the past number of days, we have seen some intense strikes with the gray smoke billowing from certain areas of this skyline. We are expecting to see White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt walk up to the podium, and this was scheduled to get underway at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm just going to give you another vantage point right here so you can see this. This is just another look, another angle, as it does look like everyone from the media is now seated. That typically indicates that this is set to get underway any moment now. You might also put your attention to the blue door on the left-hand side of your screen. That is where Caroline Leavitt will enter from, and she immediately then issues a statement before receiving questions. As we continue to follow this, I did want to share this with you. This is from Secretary Chris Wright, who said President Trump is maintaining stability of global energy during the military operations against Iran. The U.S. Navy successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz to ensure oil remains flowing to global markets. Now, there has been concern over rising oil and gas prices amid the ongoing conflict in Iran. President Trump is stating that there might be some brief pain at the pump, but for international security, he says, it is well worth it. So we are waiting for Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to enter into the room, and she did share this, is promising just that, saying that she will be hosting a press briefing at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, saying tune in. Now, yesterday, this was not on the White House public agenda. This is a new addition made this morning. And so we did want to bring that to you, as we are expecting to hear the very latest about the conflict in Iran. This comes as President Trump is predicting a quick end to hostilities. We were playing out the very latest remarks from Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, and this is a quote from Secretary Hegseth saying that we're winning decisively. Secretary Hegseth did give an update about the direction of Operation Epic Fury, which we played in its entirety, saying this is not 2003. This is not endless nation building. Those days are dead. Instead, we're winning decisively with brutal efficiency, total air dominance, and an unbreakable will to accomplish the president's objectives. That also continues to be a concern in terms of the timeline of the operation itself. President Trump had previously indicated that it would be between 4 to 5 weeks, but saying that it looks like there's been so much progress, it may end sooner rather than later. Also, we did want to bring you some new news. This is from Fox News saying that there's a new mission. President Trump has appointed Erica Kirk to serve on the U.S. Air Force Academy Board of Visitors, taking the position her late husband Charlie was slated to hold before he was assassinated in September. Now, Erica joins the panel that oversees morale, discipline, curriculum, and fiscal affairs at the Academy. Charlie Kirk, very close friends of Vice President J.D. Vance. So we're going to take you out to this live look as we are expecting Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to walk through the doors and give an update before opening the floor to questions. Another angle here on the left-hand side of your screen of the podium, and on the right-hand side of your screen, that is a live look from Beirut, Lebanon, as we continue to see activity in the Middle East. This comes as the United States and Israel targeted Iran today with what the Pentagon and Iranians on the ground said were the most intense airstrikes of the war. This despite global markets betting that President Trump will seek to end the conflict soon. So that is in direct conflict to what President Trump says. He is predicting that there will be a quick end to hostilities as the U.S. is focused on eradicating Iran's weapons supply as well as their Navy. We also have a new social media post from Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst saying one of the things that surprised me most was when they attacked countries that were not attacking them. That is what President Trump told Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst about the Iranian strikes on Gulf countries. And so this also continues to play out not just between Iran as well as the U.S. and Israel, but really a larger regional issue as some of these neighboring countries of Iran are now being targeted as well. And we've been hearing from some of the leaders, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, among others, indicating that they will not stand for these attacks against them. We continue to show you these two live looks as we are anticipating the White House press briefing to get underway momentarily. This was scheduled to start at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and an indication that this may be happening sooner rather than later is that the two TVs of just on either end of the podium are now up. Sometimes they're off until just moments before Caroline Leavitt walks through the doors to deliver her initial remarks. So we are seeing just some movement right here as we continue to wait for her arrival. On the right-hand side of your screen, we're continuing to monitor all of the developments in the Middle East as Operation Epic Fury is now in week 2 alongside Israel's Operation Roaring Lion. Quiet now there in Lebanon, but over the past number of days, we've seen some intense strikes as Israel continues to target Hezbollah locations and assets right there in Beirut. This is also a new social media post from the Israel Defense Forces right here saying that the IDF conducted an additional wave of airstrikes targeting assets and storage facilities there of the Hezbollah-affiliated association in Lebanon used to finance the purchasing of weapons and terrorist salaries as part of ongoing efforts to further degrade Hezbollah's military capabilities. And we've also been seeing that there live in Beirut as the IDF continues to focus on some of those Hezbollah assets. And this is a conversation that we've been having with top experts, high-level security officials, about the proxies, about these terrorist organizations that Iran has used often to carry out some of these missions. Hezbollah has been decimated by Israel. Hamas also not where it once was with the ongoing focus with the IDF. So we have seen some of these proxies lose its power as Iran continues to retaliate against the United States, Israel, and also attack some of its neighboring countries there in the Gulf. The White House also saying 10 days in, Operation Epic Fury delivering resounding success. 1, destroy the Iranian regime's missiles. 2, annihilate their navy. 3, ensure terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the world. 4, ensure Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon, American dominance. So those are the 4 objectives. And we've been hearing from Secretary Hegseth, we've been hearing from General Kane, as well as President Trump indicating that they are succeeding very successfully in those 4 objectives. That is what they consider success: destroying the Iranian regime's missiles, annihilating their navy, and they say many dozens of their boats now at the bottom of the ocean, ensuring terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the world. And we've been seeing Israel as well, focusing on Hezbollah in Lebanon. And 4, ensure Iran can never obtain nuclear weapon, American dominance. They've also shared an unclassified photo of some of their targets there as well. The Department of State also sharing this, saying across the Middle East, the Department of State agents are ensuring State Department charter flight operations remain safe and secure for American citizens. The safety and security of Americans is and always will be our highest priority. So we've been continuing to share all of these developments. My colleague Josh Breslow just spoke with the spokesperson for the State Department, Tommy Pigott, and we were sharing those brief remarks from him as he was also sharing that the State Department continuing to make this a priority, ensuring the safe return of Americans overseas. The U.S. Department of State also and Energy sharing this, saying it is simply unacceptable for the U.S., for the Middle East geography, and for the world economy to have a terrorist regime with nuclear weapons. They've also raised energy prices for Americans for decades. It's finally going to come to an end. We've also been seeing the stock market reacting to all of this. And this is from Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst saying they haven't moved any of it, meaning Iran's enriched uranium. That thing was really demolished, but they were starting a new site in a different location, a site that went down deeper, but they were starting a new site in a different location. That is a direct quote from President Trump speaking to Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst. All right, it does look like there's just a little bit of movement right here. Caroline Levitt, let's listen in.
Scheduling updates. Tomorrow, President Trump will travel to the great states of Ohio and Kentucky, where he will tout his economic victories and detail the administration-wide efforts to continuing lowering prices to make everyday life more affordable for working Americans. The president will visit Thermo Fisher Scientific in Ohio and give remarks at Verst Logistics in Kentucky. On Thursday, President Trump and the First Lady will host a Women's History Month event in the East Room. And on Friday, the president will sign several executive orders, and we will provide more details on those later this week. As President Trump shared with the American people last night, the United States military is making tremendous strides towards achieving our military objectives for Operation Epic Fury. 10 days in, this campaign has been a resounding success thus far, and America's warriors are winning this important fight at an even faster pace than we anticipated. More than 5,000 enemy targets have been struck so far. Iran's ballistic missile attacks are down more than 90%, and their drone attacks are down by approximately 85% since the start of Operation Epic Fury. The United States is also annihilating the Iranian regime's navy, and we have destroyed more than 50 Iranian naval vessels, including a major drone carrier ship. None of the regime's vessels are operating in major regional waterways, and the Iranian Navy has been assessed as combat ineffective. The trend is clear. U.S. combat capabilities are increasing and growing more lethal and dominant by the day, while the Iranian terrorist regime's ability to respond has rapidly declined. Now, the U.S. military is moving to dismantle Iran's missile production infrastructure. Our incredible B-2 bombers recently dropped dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs on deeply buried missile sites. Last night, President Trump reiterated his commitment toward keeping oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz so the United States and all of our allies can receive their energy needs. President Trump will not allow rogue Iranian terrorists to stop the freedom of navigation and the free flow of energy. Let me be clear. It is a good thing to wipe out terrorists who indiscriminately target civilians and attempt to hold the global economy hostage, and President Trump should be commended for doing so. As the president made unequivocally clear to the remaining elements of this terrorist regime in his statement yesterday, if they do anything to stop the flow of oil or goods within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the world's most powerful military 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Moving forward, the stated objectives for Operation Epic Fury remain the same: destroy the terrorist regime's ballistic missiles, raise their Iranian missile industry to the ground, ensure their terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region, and ensure that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. President Trump remains confident these goals will be accomplished in swift fashion. As for the oil, President Trump fully expected the rogue Iranian regime to try and disrupt the global markets. That's why President Trump and his energy team have been planning for this long before the strike and have moved quickly to address these temporary disruptions. Thus far, the Trump administration has offered political risk insurance to tankers operating in the Gulf. The Treasury temporarily waived certain oil-related sanctions, and the Commander-in-Chief has offered the U.S. Navy to escort tankers when necessary. The president and his energy team are closely watching the markets, speaking with industry leaders, and the U.S. military is drawing up additional options following the president's directive to continue keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. I will not broadcast what those options look like, but just know the president is not afraid to use them. Rest assured to the American people, the recent increase in oil and gas prices is temporary, and this operation will result in lower gas prices in the long term. Once the national security objectives of Operation Epic Fury are fully achieved, Americans will see oil and gas prices drop rapidly, potentially even lower than they were prior to the start of the operation. And we will live in a world where Iran can no longer threaten the United States or our allies with a nuclear bomb. On another matter here at home, President Trump is urging Congress to pass the Save America Act, one of the most critical pieces of legislation in our nation's history. The Save America Act is overwhelmingly popular with all Americans because each provision is rooted in common sense. The Save America Act has 5 simple requirements as requested by the President of the United States. Number 1, voters have to show ID to cast a ballot in an American election. Very simple. 90% of Americans, including more than 80% of Democrat voters, agree with this. Number 2, the Save America Act will require all voters to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in American elections. Again, this is popular and rooted in common sense. Only American citizens have the right to vote in American elections. But after Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens into our country, it's more important than ever to ensure that only American citizens are registering to vote on our nation's voter rolls, and Congress needs to pass this. Number 3, the Save America Act abolishes the incredibly unsecure practice of universal mail-in ballots, which throw the door wide open for fraud. Importantly, the Save America Act maintains exceptions for Americans to use mail-in ballots for illness, disability, military, or travel reasons. The bipartisan 2005 report of the Commission on Federal Election Reform, chaired by, of all people, former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker, concluded that, quote, absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud, and it is time for Congress to finally address this. Number 4, the Save America Act permanently bans men from competing in women's sports. President Trump signed a landmark executive order upholding the promise of Title IX and ending this dangerous and unfair practice. But now it's time for Congress to codify this into law. Number 5, the Save America Act bans transgender mutilation surgery for children. Again, President Trump signed a common sense executive order to do this and kept his promise to the American people, but now Congress needs to do the same and codify it. It's well past time for Democrats in Congress to stop perpetuating the radical and false claim that you can somehow change a child's sex. You cannot. Passing the Save America Act is the most important thing that Republicans and, frankly, Democrats can do to strengthen election integrity and protect our democracy. It's what the American people elected Republicans to do, and they must deliver on it as soon as possible. The president is calling on Congress to get the job done and send this historic piece of legislation to his desk immediately for signature. So with that today, I will take your questions. Benny, thank you for being here, and why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Caroline. So my first question is actually about the Save America Act. So one of the biggest things that the Democrats are saying, the claims that they're making, is that the Save America Act, it would prevent married women from voting in elections or make it harder for them. What do you have to say to those claims? Is there any validity to them, and where do you think they're getting this from?
There is zero validity to these claims, and I'm glad that you brought them up, because you have the Democrats who have created this myth, and it has been perpetuated, unfortunately, by many in the mainstream media. Let me be very clear. The Save America Act does not prohibit anyone from voting, with the exception of illegal aliens. And the greatest way to disenfranchise American citizens from voting in American elections is to allow illegal aliens to vote, which is what Democrats want to do. We see it taking place in Democrat jurisdictions at the state and local level across this country. So the Save America Act corrects that. And as far as married women who have changed their name, if they're already registered to vote, they're entirely unaffected by the Save Act. And for the small fraction of individuals who have changed their name or their address, they can still register to vote, of course. They just have to go through their state processes to update that documentation. And this is something that the American people, married women, and minorities and people all across this country who Democrats are insultingly saying cannot do this, they're already doing it every day, going to the Social Security office, going to the DMV, and I think it's frankly insulting that the Democrats are saying that there's certain groups of people in this country who aren't smart enough to update their documentation to allow them to vote. Again, this is a huge myth, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address it.
Of course, and then just one more question about DHS. The funding issue has been 3+ weeks now. I was at the airport this morning in St. Louis, Missouri, and it was early in the morning, and one of the TSA agents, I saw she was kind of tearing up, she was crying, and I asked her, I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, I can't make my phone payment, I can barely make my car payment that's coming up. I think a lot in the Beltway, there's so much noise between Democrats, Republicans. It's the Democrats' fault. It's the Republicans' fault. But what is the White House's message to the American people that are struggling because they're not getting that paycheck? It's take away the politics. What do you have to say to those people?
President Trump wants the Department of Homeland Security, he wants TSA, he wants FEMA, he wants the brave men and women of our United States Coast Guard to receive their paychecks, and he wants this department to be fully funded and fully reopened. And so to any American out there who is struggling without a paycheck, we know there's more than 100,000 of you across the country. To any American out there who is showing up to an airport and facing incredibly long wait times and lines, call your Democrat member of Congress and tell them to fund the Department of Homeland Security. That's what President Trump wants to do, and it's completely ridiculous that the American people are suffering as a result of these partisan games that are being played by Democrats on Capitol Hill. Thank you. Steve.
You said the operation was going faster than anticipated. What is your current timeline for how long the war will last?
So look, as you know, Steve, the president and the U.S. military's initial timeline was about 4 to 6 weeks to achieve the full objectives of Operation Epic Fury. Again, to destroy their missiles and their ability to make them, destroy their navy, permanently deny them nuclear weapons forever, and to, of course, weaken their evil terrorist proxies in the region. We know that the U.S. military and our brave warfighters are quickly and expeditiously executing these objectives well ahead of schedule, but ultimately the operations will end when the commander-in-chief determines the military objectives have been met, fully realized, and that Iran is in a position of complete and unconditional surrender, whether they say it or not.
Does the president still want Iran's unconditional surrender?
Well, when President Trump says that Iran is in a place of unconditional surrender, he's not claiming the Iranian regime is going to come out and say that themselves. What the president means is that Iran's threats will no longer be backed by a ballistic missile arsenal that protects them from building a nuclear bomb in their country. I could make an empty threat, but if I have no actions to back it up, then it's an empty threat. And so President Trump will determine when Iran is in a place of unconditional surrender, when they no longer pose a credible and direct threat to the United States of America and our allies. Adriana.
Can you explain why the Energy Secretary posted and then appeared to have deleted a post on X saying that the U.S. Navy escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, I was made aware of this post. I haven't had a chance to talk to the Energy Secretary about it directly. However, I know the post was taken down pretty quickly, and I can confirm that the U.S. Navy has not escorted a tanker or a vessel at this time, though, of course, that's an option the president has said he will absolutely utilize if and when necessary at the appropriate time.
And if this was something that was posted erroneously, could it be because of a staffer? What, I guess, will there be any consequences for this? I know you still have to consult, but just generally speaking.
Again, I would defer you to the Department of Energy to answer that question.
And if I could just follow up really quickly.
Sure.
In terms of oil sanctions, the president said that there would be some sanctions that would be lifted. Would those be on Venezuela, Russia? Could you give some specifics there and then timing for that as well?
Sure. I know it's something that the Treasury Department and the president's energy team continue to discuss, and they will ultimately consult with the president before decisions are made. I don't have any announcements on new sanctions or the lifting of new sanctions for you today. Alex.
Thank you. Reuters has reported that about 150 U.S. service members have been injured so far. Can you confirm that number and elaborate on that?
I can't confirm the exact number. I know it's within that ballpark, but I would defer you to the Pentagon for a specific number of wounded or injured thus far.
And then secondly, if I can, I wanted to ask about, there was a briefing on the Capitol Hill today, and some senators came out and said they were more convinced than ever that there would be U.S. boots on the ground. Senator Blumenthal said that. In fact, your reaction to that and any update on President Trump's thinking about it?
Look, I would say that Democrats on Capitol Hill are clearly being quite disingenuous. 3 years ago, not a single Democrat voted against the resolution condemning Iran as the world's leading state sponsor of terror. Yet now, with President Trump as commander-in-chief finally taking the action that so many Democrats have called on the commander-in-chief to do for many, many years, to wipe out the threat of a rogue Iranian terrorist regime, now all of a sudden Democrats are playing politics with this long-standing bipartisan policy of the United States, and 53 of them in the House recently voted against the resolution condemning Iran as the world's state sponsor of terror. So I wouldn't take Democrats at their word. As for boots on the ground, the president has talked about this repeatedly. Wisely, he does not rule options out as commander-in-chief. So again, I would hesitate to confirm anything that a Democrat on Capitol Hill says right now about the president's thinking. Garrett.
John, you outlined to Steve the military components of what would be involved in ending this war, but it seems like there's a political component too. The president said to Fox earlier today that he doesn't believe the new Ayatollah can live in peace. He made a variety of comments suggesting that he should be involved in picking the new Iranian leader. Is the ending of this war also contingent on Iran selecting a leader that the president finds acceptable? And if so, how is that not the definition of a regime change war?
Look, as President Trump has blatantly and frankly stated, it's obviously within the best interest of the United States and the West to no longer have a radical terrorist in charge of Iran. especially as we see their reaction to Operation Epic Fury. They had their missiles turned towards our Gulf and Arab partners in the region. Again, this was a regime that chanted, or still chants, death to America. We look at the way that they are holding the entire world hostage with the restricting of the free flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. So the president, I think, is making quite an obvious comment. Again, as for the timeline of the military operations with respect to Iran, we have objectives that we have laid out that the commander-in-chief wants to see achieved. When they are achieved, then it will ultimately be up to the president to end this operation.
Okay, so I think you're not exactly addressing my question, though. Is that political objective also necessary for the president to decide to end this war?
Look, again, I just told you the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. When those objectives are met, the president will dictate the end of these operations when he deems that Iran no longer poses a credible threat to the United States of America. And again, it goes back to what does that unconditional surrender look like? Iran can talk all they want, and their words will be very empty when we've completely annihilated their navy, as we are doing, when we've taken out the threat of their ballistic missile capability, when we can firmly, finally ensure that they can no longer make a nuclear bomb to threaten the United States and our allies and our troops in the region. And that's what President Trump is ultimately seeking to do with respect to this operation. Jennifer.
There was a shooting outside of a synagogue in Baltimore. Do you know if the president has been briefed on that, and do you have any more details on what happened?
I don't, but we certainly will get you more details, Jennifer, and I don't know if the president has briefed, but I'll check on that when I get back to the Oval Office after this. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday for the first time that he had to strike Iran because he believes that Iran was going to strike U.S. targets within 7 days, and then he bumped that down later to 3 days. Where is he getting that?
Well, that's not the first time the president has said that he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first. Again, I addressed this in the last briefing. This was a feeling the president had based on facts provided to him by his top negotiators who had been engaged with the Iranian regime in a good faith effort. The Iranian regime was lying, deceiving the United States of America, clearly trying to continue their nuclear program to create a bomb that would, of course, threaten the United States of America. Again, their ballistic missile arsenal, they were rapidly and aggressively increasing that by the month to a place where they would essentially build immunity for themselves, where a future president or President Trump would not be able to launch this incredibly successful operation. And so the president, again, as I have reiterated and he has said, was not going to sit back and allow the Iranian regime to threaten or to attack the United States of America any longer.
But there are no U.S. leaders or Israeli leaders who are making those same claims. So is he making this up to justify his decision to go to war now?
The president is not making anything up, Nancy. He is looking at this every single day based on intelligence, based on facts, and based on intelligence that he himself and his negotiators have consumed based on their, again, negotiations with the rogue Iranian regime over the past year. And the president and his team tried in a good faith way to reach a diplomatic deal through peaceful means with the Iranian regime. And Iran chose this path to death and destruction. Iran wanted to attack the United States of America, and the president was not going to sit back and allow that to happen. He was not going to sit back and allow that to happen, and everyone in this room should be grateful for it. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions for you. One has to do with a follow-up to your statement that you made at the beginning of the briefing regarding the Save America Act.
Sure.
Yesterday, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune spoke on the effort to potentially have a filibuster broken, the rules for the filibuster broken. He said the votes aren't there, one, to nuke the filibuster, and the votes aren't there for a talking filibuster. He says that's the reality. What's your reaction to what Senator Thune said?
Look, I think President Trump, the urgency behind his need to pass the Save America Act and his desire to get this country-saving legislation passed has been made quite clear. He wants all options on the table, and he wants the Senate to move as quickly as possible through whatever means necessary.
And then secondly, just regarding the president's trip tomorrow, looking ahead, why Ohio and why Northern Kentucky?
Well, why not? These are two great states with great Americans.
Just wanted to know why they were chosen.
Great states with great Americans. The president will be joined by lawmakers from both states who he greatly admires and respects and supports. And he'll be meeting with business owners in both of these places and talking about the economy, which is, of course, the utmost importance to him.
Caroline.
Thank you.
last week, the Energy Secretary issued a waiver for India to get oil, Russian oils during this energy crisis.
Yes.
Have you spoken to President about it? What's the idea behind this?
Have I spoken to the president about it?
Yeah.
Yes, I have spoken to the president about it. And the president and the Secretary of Treasury and the whole national security team came to this decision because our allies in India, as you know, Lalit, have been good actors and have previously stopped buying sanctioned Russian oil. So as we work to appease this temporary gap of oil supply around the world because of the Iranians, we have temporarily permitted them to accept that Russian oil. And this Russian oil was already at sea. It was already out on the water. So this short-term measure, we don't believe it will provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government at this time.
I have one more question about Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is a neighbor of Iran, and Pakistan is also an ally of U.S. President has been praising a lot about the field marshal. Is Pakistan providing any kind of support in this war against Iran?
That I will have to check on with the Pentagon and get back to you. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday that President Putin told him he wanted to be helpful in the Middle East. The Kremlin put out a statement where Putin said, quote, "I would like to reaffirm our unwavering support for Tehran and our solidarity with Iranian friends." How does the president think that Russia could be helpful, if not helping Iran? And did the president push Putin on Russia sharing intelligence with Iran in this war?
The president and his special envoy Witkoff have both said that, of course, they've sent a message to Russia that if that was taking place, it's not something they would be happy with, and they hope that it is not taking place. As for further details about the discussions between these two leaders, I'll leave it to the president to divulge any more of that conversation. But he did confirm it yesterday and provided you with a little bit of the background and his view and his perspective, as he always does. Luke.
Regarding the missile strike on the Iranian school, how long does the administration expect that investigation to take, and will the White House or the Department of Defense release a full report of its findings once the investigation is complete?
The Department of War will do that. The investigation continues, and as the president said yesterday at his press conference, he will accept the conclusion of that investigation, whatever it may be. We'll go to the back row for some love. Sure, in the back with the glasses. Go ahead.
Regarding the shield of the
Sitting down.
Americas.
Caroline, and then you can go, but go first.
Okay, thank you.
Is there an update regarding
You have rough real estate back there, so I'm trying to give you
is
some
there an
love.
update regarding Cuba, and also is an economic deal imminent?
Sure. I don't have any updates on Cuba for you today. Obviously, this is something the administration is actively dealing with. The president's made it quite clear it's his belief, based on fact, that the Cuban regime is bound to fall. The country is obviously in a very weak place, economically speaking. The people are crying out for help, and the president believes and knows that the Cuban regime wants a deal. So as you know, Secretary of State Rubio has been engaged in those conversations as directed by the president. I don't have any updates for you today, though.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding the Shield of the Americas, the initiative by President Trump this weekend, big names, a lot of countries, but some notable absences. For instance, Colombia, which is a key ally with the United States in terms of counter-narcotics. And President Gustavo Petro was here at the White House, and he met with President Trump. Why wasn't Colombia invited to the Shield of the Americas?
I don't think we're seeing the level of cooperation we quite want to see yet from the Colombian government to invite them to the Shield of America's event in Pact, but we certainly hope that this newfound organization will expand and we can continue to invite additional member countries. But there was quite a few countries there. I believe there were 17 countries represented, 12 heads of state with the president over the weekend. They signed a defense agreement with all of our militaries to emphasize the need to combat drug cartels through Latin America in the Western Hemisphere, and ultimately, of course, to curb the illegal trafficking of drugs to the United States, which is the president's utmost priority in all of this. So it was a great event on Saturday, and we look forward to the coalition expanding. Kelly in the back.
Caroline, thank you. Good to see you. I want to get back to another question that was asked earlier. It talked about the political aspects, but there's also the ideological and the spiritual aspects of what Iran has said for 47 years. Death to America, death to Israel. And we've just finished talking about the fact that terror has been around the world. Iran has been the nexus of that in so many ways. Has the president stated clearly to the American people why this is such an imminent threat in order for Democrats on Capitol Hill and Republicans and the American people to understand how imminent the threat was?
I think he has, Kelly. I mean, you've heard from the president on an almost daily basis over the course of the past 10 days. You've heard it from me at this podium. You've heard it from the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States. You know, the president's top cabinet and his officials have been repeatedly explaining to the American public the threat that Iran has posed to our country in this moment, but of course, over the course of the past 47 years. And their words, again, chanting death to America, speak for themselves. Go ahead. You can follow up.
Why the division within the American people? I realize that we have people are talking about the War Powers Act. They're talking about all kinds of issues. But have people forgotten just how imminent that threat was? If they keep saying death to America and death to Israel, they mean it.
Look, I don't think the American people have forgotten, but I think Democrats on Capitol Hill, they have not forgotten, but they are just so plagued with this resistance to President Trump on everything that they do that, again, they can't even rally behind the common sense, bipartisan, long-standing principle of the United States of America that Iran absolutely poses a threat to the United States, that Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And I think that's reflected again in their voting pattern. In 2023, every single member of the House of Representatives, with the exception of one, I believe the final vote was 412 to 1 in 2023 for a resolution condemning Iran as the world's state leading sponsor of terror. And now in this year, under this president in 2026, 53 Democrats voted against that exact same resolution with the exact same language. I don't think that's a change in the threat that Iran has posed to the United States. I think it's a change in the Democrat Party's thinking and their vicious hatred for President Trump. Danny? Sure.
National threat level, following on Kelly, what's the national threat level right now because of this death to America, death to Israel issue?
I believe the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI have repeatedly and continuously provided updates on the threat level to the homeland. I don't want to speak on it out of turn from up here, but of course, the federal government is continuing to coordinate and partner with local law enforcement agencies across the ground to thwart potential threats to the homeland. This is something the administration obviously takes very seriously. We are thwarting threats that, frankly, most Americans don't know about because they never make headlines, but that's the great work that the Department of Homeland Security is doing, and it emphasizes and underscores the point of why Democrats need to fund and reopen fully the Department of Homeland Security right now. Danny?
On the Iranian school, why did President Trump say yesterday that Iran may have Tomahawk missiles when there are only 3 other U.S. allies plus the U.S. that have those missiles and therefore could...
Look, again, as the president said yesterday, he will accept the conclusion of this investigation by the Department of War. I know there's been a lot of speculation in the media about who may be responsible for this. We're not going to get ahead of the Department of War and the conclusion of that investigation. The president has a right to share his opinions with the American public, but he has said he'll accept the conclusion of that investigation. And frankly, we're not going to be harassed by the New York Times, who's been putting out a lot of articles on this, making claims that have just not been verified by the Department of War to quickly wrap up this investigation because the New York Times is calling on us to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Carolyn, with the DHS currently under a partial Democrat shutdown, does the administration have any specific concerns about potential impact on Homeland Security or intelligence monitoring of sleeper cells inside the United States? And do you have any comment on the bombing, the 2 individuals that bombed New York City or tried to?
Yeah, it was absolutely despicable to see that attack in New York City. I know the FBI is investigating, and the Department of Justice and SDNY have announced they are charging those 2 individuals and alleged terrorists, and I know they won't rest until justice is sought in this case. Daniel?
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. Millions of Americans are filing taxes for the first time since the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act into law. New reports say that new IRS data says that the average federal tax refund is around $3,800, a little bit up from the last period of last year. Does the president believe that the average federal tax refund increasing this year could provide a little bit more economic growth, something that he's been very focused on as the year progresses?
Absolutely. And Americans are going to start benefiting from the fruits of President Trump and Republicans' labor through the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill and these historic tax cuts. We are midway through tax season, so just to provide an update from the Treasury Department that just went out moments ago, nearly 63.5 million tax returns have been processed thus far. 45% of the anticipated total number of tax returns by April 15th. So don't forget to file your taxes, people. And the average refund this year is more than $3,700. And we know that more than 27.5 million individuals who have filed their tax returns thus far have claimed at least one of President Trump's new tax cuts. Over 3.5 million returns have claimed no tax on tips. Over 15.5 million returns have claimed no tax on overtime. Over 9.2 million returns have claimed the enhanced deduction for seniors. And over 690,000 returns have claimed no tax on car loan interest. And another amazing statistic, nearly 3.5 million Trump accounts have been opened for children in our country thus far. So we look forward to, I know the Treasury Department continues to look forward to seeing these checks go out the door and into the pockets of hardworking Americans. And the president will be meeting with them himself tomorrow on the road in both Ohio and Kentucky. And we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline and Kara.
That was the very latest